Greetings, faithful followers. Welcome to another edition of Movie Night, live from the Monastery of Mayhem. I'm your host, Brother Jack Angry, along with the lovely Inferna.
Hello there.
Yes, and tonight's movie is the 1979 classic Zombie, which was directed by the famed Italian film director Luciano Fulci, who basically rebooted the genre in Italy with this film. Now, just to give you a little twist of the plot points, the film is basically starts out where a boat found off New York, off the coast of New York City, belongs to a famous scientist and journalist named Peter West. He travels to the Antilles with Anne, his daughter, and on the way they meet Brian, an entomologist. They arrive at Matul Island. They find Dr. Menard, another scientist, doing research, and they discover a terrifying disease which turns the islanders into horrifying zombies who devour human flesh and seem to be indestructible.
Is this brains? Like brains? Or
I think they just eat the whole person. I don't think they're limited to just brains.
I just remember in the days they always went for the head.
Yes, it's like...
Today they don't go for the head, they just go for anywhere. On the body part.
Well, you know the zombie credo, give me head till I'm dead. Of course, they do and they are, but that's neither here nor there. Now, the film continues. The boat arrives in New York without a living soul on it, but the zombie that attacks the two guards and the Coast Guard, that zombie goes on to start the plague in New York.
Ooh, good place
yes,
to make things happen.
Yes, New York
City.
It's like, well, not that New York couldn't use a little thinning of the herd, but, you know, it's like, hey, I'm all for it. Anyway, the movie continues on, and they travel back to Matul Island with Brian and Susan and their boat, trying to find a cure for the disease on the tropical island. They are confronted with more zombies, and the situation seems hopeless.
And they continue to bite everybody.
Well, yes, I mean, let's face it, this movie was a classic in the fact that it was done on a very low budget, but the makeup effects were truly terrifying, some of them, particularly the zombie rising out of the grave with the worms and things coming out of the empty eye socket. And you've seen that picture. I mean, that's a pretty much a classic picture. You've seen it on the box art. You've seen it on the web. I understand they've even released a bobblehead of that particular zombie. So, you know, we will see what we shall see about this. Now, to give you a little bit of trivia about the film, this was actually written before The Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy as an action-adventure thriller with no link to the George A. Romero films. The opening and closing scenes, which take place in New York, were added later when the producers wanted to cash in on the Romero zombie craze. So, you know, there's some good thinking on somebody's part. Now, the newspaper office scene was filmed in a busy office building, and at one point the cast and crew accidentally interrupted a meeting held by Rupert Murdoch, who, as you know, is the literary, newspaper, and media tycoon you've heard about periodically on the news. He proceeded to throw the crew out of his office, and quite angrily as well. So there was a little bit of fame there. There's also several scenes where hordes of the living dead stumble across the Brooklyn Bridge at the end of the film. Although a national state of emergency was declared on the local radio station, claiming that the city had been overrun by zombies, if you look in the corner of the screen, you can see traffic moving along quite normally on the Brooklyn Bridge, because the filmmakers couldn't afford to pay the necessary permits to the city to have them stop traffic for that period while they were filming. So they just kind of let it go on in the background, hoping that nobody noticed. So, again, great job, guys. All right.
And their days and nights right?
Well, yes, they actually got their days and nights right. I mean, there were none of those scenes, but there was a scene where our heroes escaped from Menard's cottage. You can see one of the crew members actually reflected in the window of the Jeep holding the camera, which is funny. There's also a famous shark versus zombie fight in this film. zombie gets his arm bitten off. However, we do see the same zombie with his arm after he supposedly lost it in the scene, and we see the zombie in another scene without his arm before it was even bitten off by the shark in the first place. So they did just get some things wrong there. But hey, this is Italian zombie films. We can't expect perfection, but this is still a great film.
I just love those scenes when they mess them up like that.
Yes, it's like it makes the movie. It makes it fun if you're observant and you are watching the film. Even if you're watching it frame by frame in slow motion, you want to catch these things. Just to say that, well, we've caught that and we pointed that out. It's kind of like finding Easter eggs in a video game or a DVD or something. Now, we're going to give this film, with 1 being the absolute worst and 5 being the absolute best, we're going to give this 3.5 on our Reggie scale because it was a great effort and it does a lot to further the genre of the zombie film, which we're all about here at Movie Night, live from the Monastery of Mayhem. Speaking as a zombie myself, and I've been around since, at least the 1700s, as long as I can remember.
And you still have your arms.
I still have my arms. I mean, they've fallen off a few times, but I sew them back on. And, it's like, I think he does good for the zombie culture overall. We're going to say it was good, but with a few flaws, but don't let that detract from your enjoyment of the movie. And if you haven't seen this film, go rent it. It's on Netflix under their streaming side, so you can actually do it. If you have your membership, you can look at it free. You can check it out online on YouTube and any other film outlets such as Dailymotion or what have you. Now, our next movie is going to be a really bad one. I mean, this movie is so bad, you look up bad in the dictionary and you see this picture. But we love it here. We ran it on our show, the Angry Brothers Omaha Shockorama. It's Bad Taste by Peter Jackson. Now, this 1987 Australian Outback feature stars nobody we've really heard of. But the film itself, just to give you a little background on it, it's based around a small town or village in Australia on the outback, and they find out the human population is pretty much vanished. The aliens, or the protagonists, are big-headed, humanoid-looking aliens with heads that look like giant asses. And I mean, these things really look like giant asses.
Kind of like a big hemorrhoid.
Yeah, a big hemorrhoid. Exactly. That's an interesting analogy there, Inferna. And it goes on to our heroes, which are basically 4 dim-witted guys from the New Zealand National Air and Space Defense League, arrive in this small town to investigate reports of UFOs landing, and they take on a battalion of these aliens who have massacred the town's population as part of their fast food chain operation. Basically, human flesh is a delicacy in some parts of the galaxy, and humans we're basically somebody's happy meal.
I don't even want to think about that right now.
Yes, it's like, I don't think that
I'm devastated with all this eating flesh.
Yes, it's like, well, it's a common theme here in our universe, but hey, if it didn't, we'd all be out of work, so, we'll go with it.
Just brings me back to the time you guys tried eating me.
Well, we did eat you. You just regenerated from your own leftovers, but hey, you were still delicious anyway, especially covered in A1 sauce.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard about sauces before.
Yes. Well, it's like our idea was if you tasted half as good cold, but you regenerated from your own leftovers.
You're awesome.
Yes, I am. But I truly am. But hey, we don't want that getting around. Anyway, some interesting trivia about the film. The director, Peter Jackson, who has directed the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the new Hobbit film, I bet he loves to be reminded of this film. It's like I could see him at a press conference, somebody mentions this, you see him trying to crawl under the desk and get the hell out of there.
Gotta start somewhere.
Well, that's it, it's like, and he started out making really crappy movies.
Really?
Jumbo jet. It wasn't easy, but nothing is. No. When I feel heavy metal, and I feel that I need when I lie and I'm easy all of the time, but I'm never sure why I need you. Please, I need you. When I was young, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. When I feel heavy metal, and I feel that I need when I lie and I'm easy all of the time, but I'm never sure why I need you.
So it's like, see what a little time and a little money will do. Now, some of the trivia about the film that you might or might not know, this film was shot on weekends over a 4-year period with friends of Peter Jackson's playing the lead role. Jackson funded most of the film himself using his credit cards, his bank accounts, until towards the end of the shoot when he did get a grant of money from the New Zealand Film Commission.
Was he still married by the end of the film?
I don't know, Ed. That I'm not sure of. However, there were some scenes where one of the lead actors died during the filming, so his part had to be hastily rewritten. So you'll see him in one scene and he virtually disappears in the rest of the film. So that's what happened. Now, one thing about this film, oddly enough, this was banned by the Australian state of Queensland until the early 1990s, when the Queensland Censorship Board was disbanded. Now, this isn't like the United States where pretty much anything goes. The Queensland Censorship Board, from what I researched, was pretty strict, and there were a lot of films of basically mild content that were bad because apparently in Queensland they're somewhat parochial about things, and they tended to ban a lot of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like we hate censorship.
I can see that. Yeah.
We hate censorship here at the Monastery of Mayhem. So, you know, what we have to do is give Peter Jackson kudos for hanging in there and getting this movie, even though it is horrible, released, you know, as just basically to say, up yours, censorship. But back to the review.
That wasn't number one either.
No, it wasn't. No, we weren't saying anybody's number one. Let me point out that Doug Wren, who was the friend who played the alien leader, Lord Crumb, he died during the post-production phase of this because of the non-audio filming. His voice was dubbed in by a different actor, and you might see that in the continuity of the film, so you may notice that was in there. Some of the really noticeable goofs in the film. The team members were talking on the car's CB radio. They start out by holding the microphone headset backwards. So it's like, these guys are not too bright. There's a car chase scene through the forest, and there's a grill over the rear window that keeps appearing and disappearing during the course of the filming. So that's a neat trick. You will see it where one of the characters, Derek, wipes some blood off his glasses and smears it further. The next shot shows his glasses perfectly clean again. Ooh, magic. There is also a scene, you'll see the cast's hairstyles and the color of their socks changed from scene to scene due to the sporadic 4-year shooting schedule.
Oh my.
So it's like one guy might have a mullet and the next scene, he's completely bald. You'll see something like that as well. Now, there's also a scene where Derek falls off a cliff. You can see one of his shoes falling off, and in the next shot, when he hits the ground, both shoes are on his feet. So, continuity, it's like continuity was something that was really unheard of.
Another Superman. What do you know?
Yes, it's like another Superman film, but hey, we love it anyway. All right, now our last film of the evening is The Devil's Reign. Now, this film was a popular at the drive-in circuit. I mean, it ran all the major drive-ins. I can recall in the early 70s and even the early 80s still having it appear at the local drive-in here at the Monastery of Mayhem in our beloved town of Omaha, Nebraska. It was quite popular on the late midnight movie circuit, and it was quite popular with the cable TV circuit as well. I can recall watching
They had cable then?
Yes, they did have cable. You know, it's like, I've had cable for quite a while, Inferno. I'm not totally primitive.
The old geezer.
Yes, it's like old farts like me watching horror movies on cable. What a concept. But anyway, this movie is from I believe 1979 or 1981. I'm not quite sure which. I'll have to check my figures. But to give you a brief view of the plot, a group of Satanists in the American rural landscape have terrible powers which enables them to melt their victims. Yes, melting people.
Sounds fun.
Yes, sounds like something I'd do. However, one of the children of an earlier victim does vow to destroy them. Now, this movie has the honor of being John Travolta's first feature film after his success as Vinnie Barbarino on the Welcome Back Kotter TV series.
Did you just say John Travolta?
I said John Travolta,
Oh
yes.
my gosh, he said John Travolta?
Yes, I did. And an extremely young John Travolta.
Got him on my head. In my head.
The Devil's Reign with Ernest Borgnine, William Shatner, Eddie Albert, Keenan Wynn, John Travolta, Tom Skerritt, and Ida Lupino.
What is it, Julie? What are you seeing?
Book. A long time ago. I can see them. They're looking for the book.
Fight! A curse on thee and thine forevermore. I will follow thee and thy descendants for all eternity. Until the book is mine again.
And what about the disappearance of my family, for crying out loud? Well, Sam, I don't know what in the hell he wants of my family, but there's only one way to find out.
Hail, O deathless one, who calls me from out of the pit.
An angry Lucifer lashes out and attempts to forever trap these sorrowful souls in a living hell. Will he succeed? Find out with The Devil's Reign.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, he didn't have a big part. Basically, we only see him towards the end of the film when the Satanists are melting because they broke their deal with Satan in regards to some things. And we'll see John Travolta laying on the ground and his face turning to wax and melting and all that. But it still was a feature credit for him, so give the man a break, you know. He had to get into the business somehow, and this was as good a way as any. At least he wasn't doing porn films.
He can dance.
And yes, he can dance. I mean, he made the white leisure suit famous. And I have a few of those hanging in my closet, by the way. I'm just waiting for the time to break them out again. Anyway, one of the film's technical directors, and he had a bit part in the film, was Anton LaVey, the actual founder of the American Church of Satan. He plays a high priest in this movie. So if you're a fan of Anton LaVey's, you know, you can see him there, and way to go. Now, the shooting schedule of the film was plagued with eerie events and accidents. things didn't work, weird things happened, people got injured, and a lot of people did believe the film production was actually cursed. Now, because of this, Ernest Borgnine made a vow never to film this kind of, to work on a project with this kind of subject matter again, and he never did. I mean, if you look at Ernest Borgnine's career, he basically only did one satanically themed movie, and this was it, people. He just refused to do them.
I can just imagine stunts in those days.
Well,
A lot of bones broken. And
yes,
everything.
the stuntman. I mean, the stuntman was definitely took a bigger risk then as he does now, but it's still a dangerous work. I wouldn't recommend it myself. Now, some of the goofs of the film, you're going to see Julie, the female lead, played by Joan Prather, who you'd remember from the 8 Is Enough TV series. She drives away from Tom, played by, I think, Tom Skerritt, if I'm not mistaken. Before he goes back into town, you can see the shadows from the off-screen crew being visible or being reflected on the ground in the setting sun. It's like, well, you know, it's like this is what happens when you use natural lighting. You're going to get these things, but it's still fun nonetheless. Now, there's also a scene where a rocking chair moves by itself. The camera pans up and down to show the knife in the arm of the chair, and you can clearly see the fishing line tied to the chair, extending to the knife and going somewhere off camera to make it rock back and forth. So that was some really great technical work. This film, being the classic that it is, and we'll use the phrase classic because you can see how John Travolta got his start. You can see a young William Shatner basically off of, he was in that period which lasted quite a few years from his time on Star Trek to before he did T.J. Hooker and Rescue 911 and some of the other series he's done. He still much looks like the Captain Kirk, the classic Captain Kirk of the original series, you know, before he got bald and kind of heavy and, you know, became the media whore that he is, but we love him anyway. You know, way to go, Bill. Anyway, and the film also stars a young Tom Skerritt, who was a relative unknown at the time, but did carry the film off rather well, playing the embattled lead actor fighting the Satanists, trying to save his family, his girlfriend, and his community. So we'll have to give him big kudos for that. The film, we're going to give 4 Reggies because of the fact that it's not quite the schlock that some people would make it out to be. It's actually a fairly competent film that delivers what it promises, which is to deliver a coherent storyline and some really great special effects and some good scares as well. So we're going to give it 4 Reggies. Way to go, guys. So this brings to a close another episode of Live from the Monastery of Mayhem. I'm your host, Brother Jack Angry, along with
Inferna.
Yes, along with Inferna. And you can look for us on Indie Horror TV. You can look for us on Vimeo. You can also look for us on Blip TV. We are appearing on all those locations. If you're in the Omaha area and you have Cox Communications cable, you can check us out Friday mornings, or I'm sorry, that's Saturday mornings at 1 a.m. on Cox Public Access Channel 22. The name of our program there is the Angry Brothers Omaha Shakarama. So, good night, unpleasant dreams, and keep America on top. Watch horror hosts, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.